Hello, welcome to Coffee with Vic. I'm your host, Victor Vogel. Today we're going to try to wrap our arms around capitalism and just get a basic understanding. I'll be with you in just one moment. Capitalism's greatest virtue is fair trade. Its greatest failing is putting profit before people. So we'll talk about some of those pros and cons as we try to understand a little more about capitalism here on Coffee with Vic. Thanks for joining me. I hope you have your coffee available. I have mine right here. I'm going to have a little. So we're on our way. Let's go ahead and go down this journey here. First of all, you really need to know that capitalism needs a free market to operate. It doesn't do well necessarily in dictatorships, although you can find it in dictatorships. It just doesn't thrive like it does in a free market society, like a democratic society. So that's what we're kind of focusing on, is the free market side. To understand that, capitalism is where private parties own the products or services they produce, usually using the labor of others. Now, that labor isn't owned by them. People can come, in a free society, people can come and work as they will and reject or accept the wage. So it's not totally owned. The labor isn't totally owned by them, but capitalism becomes so powerful and that it seems like that at points in times, like this is the only job in the market area, or the only job anywhere to be found anywhere near a small town where maybe manufacturing's been taken out. So it often feels like companies and capitalists have the upper hand. Now, in some non-democratic countries, like in Africa, you actually do have people owned by the capitalists. It's like the labor is slave labor, and in many cases, child slave labor. Now, continue on, if capitalists or businesses are incorporated, the owners may be shareholders, stakeholders, or groups of people. They don't have to be just individuals. Production and services are really based on supply and demand in a free market, and pricing is based on supply and demand in a free market. The greater the demand, less supply there is, the higher the price normally is on a product or service. As supplies increases and demand lessens, the price decreases with that. The primary purpose, as it's always been since the inception of the capitalist concept, is to improve the wealth of the owner or the stakeholders or shareholders of the capital. That's the primary purpose. Now, capital can be raised to achieve increased wealth by investors, so that people can reach out to investors, they can reach out to other people and tell them, hey, look, I've got a great deal here. The people invest, and then, of course, they are paid back in some way. They can earn some interest, but it's still focused on making that capital owner of the capital more wealthy and can continue to become even more wealthier than they are. Now, let's look at capitalism and government for a little bit, because the role that government plays, often we hear this concept where this country won't ever be socialist. They'll always be capitalist, and consequently, the government should be run like a capitalist. Well, in fact, that's not how it's set up in the United States, and that's not how the founders thought about capitalism when they put it together, because within the preamble of the Constitution, they have their job description for government, and this role here also applies to capitalism. So generally capitalists themselves like a government laissez-faire, non-involvement, government non-involvement is a general preferred approach of capitalists when it comes to government. They just don't want government involved in any way, shape, or form. The less there is of it, the better we are in their mind. But keep in mind, their primary role is to make themselves rich. Government should be involved to ensure equitable competitiveness and to protect the free market from monopolies and oligarchies. I mean, companies like Amazon becoming so big that they control everything, and no one has the ability to jump in there and start up a company and grow like Amazon grows. They would kind of be devoured by Amazon or pressured out of the market by Amazon. Not that they're doing this, just that's a potential when you get that big. That's where government regulation plays an important role, and why our founders felt like it was important to have them play that role. And as they also, though, protect a nation, the government ensures proper infrastructure and security for a free market society. That's roads and highways and transportation systems for people to get on. And that also includes the internet and other sources where people deliver products and services. So the way that the government regulates that and pays for that is they put a capital gains tax on corporations and companies so that they can sort of pay for the government's structure for kind of watching over the capitalists to make sure they don't become monopolies. Now, if that is happening, if there's a dispute between different governments, like in trade disputes, then that would be done and adjudicated through organizations that are designed to handle those regulations and those disputes and disagreements. Government's role in capitalism is really to ensure that there is a level and equitable playing field for every single person who wants to create a business and watch that business grow. And of course, not everybody does, but there are some who don't have that opportunity. Now, some of the pros of capitalism are the fact that innovation comes out of capitalism. We got a lot of new things, electric cars, smartphones, all this kind of stuff really came out of capitalism and the investment that people put in things, and then they created new ideas to stay ahead of the next person. And so capitalism does foster innovation, also fosters innovation production methods or innovative production methods. So not only do they create new products, but they create new ways to create those products. So it becomes very helpful. One of the major problems with that is oftentimes it's at the expense of jobs and people. The best price for the quality of product and services. Capitalism tends to give you the best price because they want you to buy it. So that will alter depending on how things go, how competitors come in and intrude on you, etc. But normally they try to put the best price that a person will buy that product, that quality product for. So that's how the pricing sets. So that's kind of a nice benefit of capitalism, is you're getting, what you pay for, so to speak. Allowance of competition in a fair and equitable environment, which tends to lower prices on products and services and minimize inflation. So, although this is a benefit of capitalism, a lot of the times it doesn't happen. You've got to understand, when somebody's trying to make themselves richer, when other people come in with that same attitude and try to start taking shares of the market, that's not kind of an acceptable approach to most capitalists. But those that have a long-term focus tend to understand that competition will make them do different and better things, become more innovative, add new flares to it, provide different avenues for them to approach, etc. So those are all things that you need to look forward to. Owners maximize efficiency in producing products and services to help improve, so they are always looking for a better, faster way to make something. So, what we need to do now is talk a little bit about the cons of capitalism. The first con of capitalism is when it's left unregulated, capitalism does not encourage a level playing field. Like I said, people are really get into the greed mode, and in many cases, it becomes very ugly, and people break laws. And we're seeing a lot of this right now in the news as we watch people in our government and people in business and foreign governments get involved in our business. It's just not a pretty sight. And that is really somewhat of a product of capitalism, unchecked, unregulated, where human greed begins to take control over what the positive aspects of what capitalism can do. It also puts those that are disadvantaged in difficult situations to try to be competitive, build business, and grow business because they're not financially capable or physically capable. In some cases, it's ethnically a racist kind of issue where people are not allowed the proper education or receive the proper loans or whatever it might be. And that's because capitalists tend to rally themselves around each other and people who are like themselves. It's difficult. It's not true about all capitalists, and that's why we have the pros for capitalism out there. But in a lot of cases, you'll find that to be the case. Capitalism can actually rig the system to prevent innovation and competitive intrusion. You get into some very nasty situations of spying on other people, withholding information. You find this in the pharmaceutical industry, so they can keep prices excessively high. Capitalism can actually destroy character when you start doing that. And they can also destroy communities through greed by really forcing people who don't have the financial wherewithal to live a normal life, to work double jobs or longer hours or different hours or travel too much or whatever that might be. Things that interfere with family life, interfere with your community, interfere with being around your kids, those kinds of things. And also, I've been party to several right sizing, they call it. I call it downright downsizing or firing people. At one point, I finally decided my career I'd had enough of it, and that's when I got out of business. That where people they considered, in one instance, they had in their mission statement, "People are our greatest assets," and they got rid of them before they got rid of anything else. Because there's a high cost associated with maintaining an employee versus a piece of equipment or something else. And I've seen a lot of executive take a lot of heavy bonuses and get rid of employees to get those bonuses. So that's some of the cons of capitalism from the greed side. There's really no incentive to help others, including the actual workforce. Capitalism's primary goal, like I said, is self-wealth, and that's even at the expense of people in society and communities in general. So, for a quick overview here, capitalism is really integral to our total system of democracy. The pros offer a lot that can help this country be great, but it's one of those things that if it's unregulated, if it's not controlled and left to every individual, the concept of individuals' greed and everything taking control can do a lot of damage to the country and to communities and to people in general. America's founding fathers actually included promotion of the general welfare in the Constitution in the preamble just to balance capitalism's cons. They knew that government could, would need to be available to ensure that corruption didn't creep into the capitalistic concept. And even at that, it's very difficult to do, as we know now as we watch our government struggle with this whole concept. It instructed the government to protect the rights of all to pursue their idea of happiness as outlined in the preamble. That means every single person. So there are programs that the government have out there to control the greed and the heavily strong capitalistic move, to control lobbyists, to control foreign powers from trying to manipulate us, to controlling corporations becoming too big and too powerful that they began to interfere with our democracy and this whole concept that our country was founded on. So government plays a big role in that. That's why the government cannot be a capitalistic government. It can't be one-sided. If it's one-sided, the whole preamble gets thrown out the window, and our forefathers and everything that they tried to set up to guard us and protect us basically gets thrown out the window with it. It's the government's role to create the level playing field and to allow all of that to happen. So that's what we should be supporting, is our government's integral role of checks and balances to make sure all this happens as it should be happening. So I hope you enjoyed this short second. Like I say, stay tuned for our next video. It'll come out shortly. Best way to do that, subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Thanks for watching Coffee with Vic. I'm your host, Vic Vogel.